The Flash's 7th season has come to a close, and with it brings possibly the most divisive season yet. Also the most critically panned season we've had. And season 5 was the only other time that the show has had this sort of situation. But back then I remember the consensus being near unanimous that season 5 wasn't very good at all. Season 7, on the other hand, has far more people who actually really enjoy the season than I remember seeing with Season 5. But at the same time, some of the criticisms I'm seeing for Season 7 are so much worse than what people said about Season 5. Like, quite a few of the big DCTV YouTube channels are calling it unwatchable and possible the breaking point for them going ahead in the show's future. Now, Season 5 wasn't good at all, but I don't remember there being that much directed hate during that year. Like, I don't remember people saying that they were going to just completely quit and drop the show because of that season, whereas with Season 7, I'm seeing that. But really quickly, before I delve into ranking the show's 7 seasons, I just want to ask if you can take a moment to subscribe if you're not already. I make DC and Marvel videos every single week, and new subscribers really do help to keep up the motivation to make new videos. And also, this is a very divisive topic, so as always, I just want to say that we can all have differing opinions and still respect each other and respect each other's opinions. So if you disagree or feel differently to my ranking or opinion on the seasons, let me know why in the comments. Let me know why you'd rank them your way or how you'd rank them your way. There's no need to dislike the video because I'm sure we're all just here because we want The Flash to be the best show it can be. But anyway, let's get into it. So in 7th place, I have Season 7. So I do unfortunately believe that Season 7, the most recent season, deserves the last place spot. And now maybe it's the fact that it's so recent, so I may need to rewatch some of the other seasons and then this one. But I don't know. I just personally think that as a whole, this season has far too much of what I consider to be the absolute worst of the entire show. Like, out of the 7 seasons run, I think that Season 7 has some of the genuine worst, borderline unwatchable parts of The Flash. And almost everything that happens this season just felt so random and like it was just something the writers thought was a cool idea, but then decided to go ahead and do it with no other reason than it was cool. So at the beginning of the season with Eva actually had some surprisingly decent episodes. But then the Speed Forces arc is what I think is the worst string of episodes in the entire show, and may actually be my least favorite group of episodes in the entire Arrowverse. So out of all of the Arrowverse shows, I think that the Speed Force arc might be my least favorite group of episodes out of any of them. An interlude was completely unnecessary, and I genuinely think that this was a budget-saving issue on them. Like, they can say all they want that these episodes were necessary to show the development of some side characters, but I don't know, I think it's just very likely that this was their way of having some of the bigger cast members not around so they could save money there, and then also get around COVID issues. Then the final arc with Godspeed did have some stuff in it that was actually pretty good, even great. But as a whole, even that arc was just showing us how disappointing it is that Godspeed and August Heart ended up only being in 4 episodes after being set up for almost 3 years of the show. And then the actual final is probably my least favourite final of the entire show, honestly. But I don't know, it's just, this season just has so many issues and failed on so many fronts that I really do hope they can turn it around in Season 8. Because if they can't, I'm really worried that The Flash is going to have lost a sizable chunk of its fan base. And, like, It definitely did lose some people after Season 5 and Season 4, but I think that The Flash is in a very dangerous situation it is at the moment. Like, it's getting to the point now where if they can't turn it around, I genuinely do think that they're going to start running into trouble. I know that CW doesn't really care about live viewers and all of that sort of stuff, but even in terms of like streaming, I can see that they'll start to take notice that The Flash isn't getting near the kind of the views or the buzz that it used to be getting, and that's worrying, honestly. In 6th place, I have Season 5. So unfortunately, Season 5 isn't even that much better than 7. Like, in my head for the past couple of days, I have been going back and forth over and over again because I really didn't know which season I disliked the most. But overall, I think Season 5 is just slightly better for a few reasons. So the future stuff in this season was actually pretty good. And I didn't think Nora was a good character at all this season, but a lot of her backstories and the glimpses into a post-crisis future or a future without Barry were actually really interesting, and I thought that they did that very well. This season also had the backdrop of Eobard Thawne locked in prison in the future, and we get glimpses into this plotline every couple of episodes, and this was actually really well done as well. And what made it better is that it had a very, very satisfying conclusion in the final. Like, we had pieces for this Eobard plotline sprinkled throughout the whole season, and it all culminated in the final, which ended up being a very, very good final. Like, this season also ended up having both one of the best premieres in the Flash history and one of the best finals in the Flash history. Like, it's crazy that one of the weakest seasons has had one of the best premieres and one of the best finals. But then obviously there's a whole lot of stuff in this season that is just absolutely terrible in my opinion. It doesn't help that Cicada is one of the most boring villains, maybe the most boring villain the show has ever had. We had to endure the version of this character for 22 episodes. Like, even when they switched it up and like changed it so that it was his daughter who was Cicada now, it was still pretty boring in my opinion. And the only reason he wasn't caught, or she wasn't caught in the very second episode, is because the writers made the team as inept as possible. Like, seriously, if they actually wrote Barry or Cisco or Kaylin in a smart way, Cicada would have been caught immediately. But instead, we had to watch Cicada fucking fly away or just jump into the sky after every single encounter. And Barry would just say, oh no, he escaped. It was so stupid, and it was so infuriating to watch. Another really annoying thing is that, like, in the second episode, or whenever he first appeared, everyone was like, okay, well, why don't we just call your heroes? Why don't we call Oliver or Kara or someone else to take down Cicada? And Nora is like, oh, they all tried, but they all failed. So you're telling me Cicada, who is one of he's one of the weakest villains that this show has had, okay? And yet Oliver Queen, who isn't a metahuman, is just one of the best fighters in the Arrowverse. Kara Danvers, who isn't a metahuman either, she's Kryptonian. The Legends, who, some of them are metahumans, but for the most part they're just time travelers, couldn't beat Cicada. That was their way of heightening the villain or making the villain seem threatening without actually showing him to be threatening, and that was lazy in my opinion as well. The one thing that keeps this season just a tad above season 7 is that even through all of this bullshit, there were still glimpses of a better storyline and glimpses of better things to come, and the teasers for Crisis that kept popping up genuinely have me still into this season in a way season 7 just could not replicate. Season 7 didn't have that kind of, you know, that look into the distance that there was something great coming down the line, whereas season 5 did. You know, we really had to look forward to Crisis during this season, so that really did keep this one a little bit above water. In 5th place, I have season 4. So season 4 was the first season that I personally started to worry about the Flash or the quality of the Flash. I know most people had huge issues with the 3rd season, and they definitely should have done Salvatore better in season 3, but I honestly did not dislike that season near as much as most. Season 4, on the other hand, was the first time I had to struggle through a season. This was the first time that I started to not be excited going into new episodes. It just felt like the spark or fun from the first 3 seasons were gone. Now sure, season 3 maybe started this path, but it was the premiere for season 4 that I knew something was very different about the show. The Thinker was actually a pretty good villain, but it was the fact that even though he was cool and seemed threatening at the beginning, the show quickly fell into this repetitive and formulaic state where almost every single episode would follow the exact same route. There'd be a metahuman from the bus, Team Flash would find the metahuman, they'd convince the meta to help them fight DeVoe or convince the meta to not be bad, then DeVoe shows up at the end of the episode, absorbs the meta, and it's end of the episode. And then the following episode will have the very same plot. Like, you can do that maybe 3 or 4 times in a season before it gets just insanely, like, you know what's going to happen every episode, and that's kind of disappointing. But the show did it 12 times and maybe more, so that's kind of crazy that they did that same storyline so many times in one season. Now, the season did have some standout moments in episodes though. Seeing Wally in the Flash costume in the premiere was awesome, and then episodes like Flash Time and Lose Yourself, they really showed that the writers still knew how to make episodes reminiscent of the show's best days. So as a whole, I don't think I would say season 4 is bad, I just think it was pretty damn disappointing. In 4th place is season 6. So season 6 is kind of a weird one to talk about. It doesn't really have a proper ending due to COVID, but having seen the season 7 episodes that would have been season 6, I don't think much of my opinion would have changed from what I have here. But it's weird because the first half of the season with Bloodwork was genuinely great, like one of the best storylines the show has put out in my opinion. But then the second half with Eva or Mirror Monarch was honestly quite bad. So unfortunately that leaves us with a season that is about 50% great and 50% not great. But even in the Eva part of the season, we did get a few tiny cool things like the return of Wally, Pied Piper, seeing the effects of Crisis, and then all of the different wells affecting Nash, including Thawne. I also did really like the death of the Speed Force arc, because I liked how they linked it into Oliver and the Spectre from Crisis. But it's the fact that this arc sets up the worst story Flash ever has during season 7, which is the Speed Force arc, that makes me a little annoyed at this one looking back. Now, in terms of the first half of the season, I think the show did a fantastic job at getting us ready for Crisis. Every episode focused on Barry trying anything and everything to learn how to stop Crisis, or just to prepare his team for a world without the Flash, and even the titles of the episodes were direct references to Crisis storylines or just cool teases to Crisis. Like we had a Flash with the Lightning, The Last Temptation of Barry Allen, and Dead Man Running. So this all played pretty well into Ramsey aka Bloodwork's story, and it was also just a really well done arc. And honestly, it did give me a lot of faith and hope in the new showrunner and writers room that they had learned from the mistakes of seasons 4 and 5, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. In third place, I have season 3. So this might be the one season that everyone kind of places in a different spot, because everyone has different feelings or different opinions on it. And I personally think that while it's a step down from 1 and 2, it's still a very enjoyable season. Now sure, Savitar had a lot of wasted potential. They could have done a lot of great stuff with his character, and they just sort of stumbled with him through the whole season. But there's still a lot of great stuff going on in this season in my opinion. We had the real beginnings of Kid Flash, Killer Frost, and Jesse Quick. HR was an awesome addition to the show. Flashpoint was a really good episode even if it should have been a crossover level event, but I still had a lot of fun with it. We got to see our first real episodes with the actual Garrick, and he worked great as sort of a mentor to Barry, warning him about the dangers of time travel and such. And even Julian Albert was a very interesting character, and it's sort of a shame we never got to see more of him. But I don't know, I just think that this season has its issues for sure, but isn't nearly as bad as most people make it out to be. And honestly, I feel very similar with Flash Season 3 as I do with Arrow's third season. In second place, I have Season 1. So Season 1, the original. This is the first season on this list that I think is fantastic or perfect. Like there really isn't much you can do to improve this season. They nailed almost every single aspect of it in the best ways, and the mystery surrounding Wells and if he was the Reverse Flash was great. Then the reveal and him as a full-on villain felt so threatening. It also helped that everything felt so fresh this season. I've seen some accounts on Twitter and whatnot lately say that seasons 1 and 2 aren't as good as we remember and all that sort of nonsense, but I think that the reason people currently feeling that way is because everything that was so new and fresh in season 1 has been done over and over again in almost every season since. So sure, you can go back and look at it now after seeing everything that comes after. You might be a little bit underwhelmed, but when this season came out, it was absolutely flooring everyone, and I just personally think this season is still one of the top tiers in terms of comic book television. And in first place, I have Season 2. So I know a lot of people think Season 2 is a slight step down from Season 1, but I personally disagree. Season 2 to me took what Season 1 started and just made it that much better. Zoom was absolutely terrifying, and in his first fight with Barry, he practically killed him. Like, he crippled Barry in a way that no other villain ever did. Now, I will say that I think Season 1 is the more consistently good season. Like, I wouldn't say there's a single episode in Season 1 that isn't at least good, whereas in Season 2, there's a couple episodes towards the end of the season that aren't near as good as they should be, and the season also doesn't have the most well-written final, compared to Season 1 final, which is just 40 minutes of character-focused perfection in my opinion. But I think the highs in Season 2 are higher than the highs in Season 1. The season also introduces us to the multiverse, which possibly makes it the most important season of DCTV ever, since this inevitably leads all the way to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And seeing places like Earth 2 and whatnot really helped to differentiate Zoom from Thawne and the settings and locations of Season 1 from Season 2. The season also handled mysteries incredibly well, with things like who is Zoom, who is the man in the Iron Mask, and I don't know, I just feel like when it comes to the Flash and the Arrowverse in general, I just don't think you can get much better than this season. But anyway, that is my ranking of all 7 seasons of The Flash, but how would you rank them? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and all of that, and I hope you have a great day.